Welcome to the Beautiful Life Podcast. I am Ronnie Swace, and my guest today is Moira Hutchison. Moira, we've got a list of all your expertise. So we are a intuitive life coach, hypnotherapist, Reiki master, tarot card and human design reader, and meditation teacher. Did I leave anything out?
Oh, there's lots more.
Oh, is
That's
that
that's the that's the Coles Notes version of what I do.
oh, is that right? Well, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Well, a little bit more. I blend a number of different modalities. Like you did hit on a bunch of them, but I weave them together so as
Oh,
that when somebody comes to see me, generally speaking, they come and they don't really say, "Oh, I just want a tarot reading," or "Oh, I just want a human design reading." Although they can. That is definitely something that I do. But generally speaking, people will say things like, "I feel really stuck. I've been I know how to get to move forward, but I can't seem to figure out what my motivation is or what my best way forward is." And so from there, then I start weaving in. Like I might do a human design reading. There's other aspects of human design that I use. Um, and then I might do tarot card reading on just intuitive coaching. So that's kind of what I mean, and energy work too. That's what I mean about weaving it together. It
okay,
really
awesome.
meets the person where they are.
Okay, okay, I like that. I like that wording. Okay, you talk about feeling stuck.
Hmm.
The world today, that we're
Hmm.
all emerging from, from this challenging time period.
Hmm.
We're all in this space of a lot of unknowns right now, a lot of unknowns happening. Um, the term stuck, when you say that, let's talk about that term a little bit. Like stuck, are they stuck emotionally, physically, mentally? Are they stuck because it's a comfort zone? Are they stuck? Are they afraid of the world? Is it all of the above? Like when you use the term feeling stuck, what do you mean? Like what's your definition of that?
It is all of the above. Exactly
Okay.
what you just said. So it can be stuck because they are fearful for going out and not wanting to get back into the way things used to be, or they are feeling stuck because now they're working completely from home, or they're feeling stuck because they're not finding what gives them joy or what lights them up, or they're feeling stuck because they're scared, you know?
Okay, so all right, so now we can break this down. Okay. Like out of those things, like how do you even begin? Right? Okay, so let's say it's rooted in fear of
Mhm.
the unknown, fear of, continuation of the bad that's happening, fear that you want it to be really good, but you're so scared to put your hope out there.
Mhm.
What would you like, what would be the first words you would say? Like, okay, let's sit down and let's, discuss this. How would you even approach somebody in that space?
I would let them tell me and break it down, what's actually happening. One of the pieces is as we mentioned at the beginning there, I'm a meditation teacher and a energy healer and a hypnotherapist. And so from that perspective, when somebody's coming and they're feeling anxious or fearful, my key piece to start with is I have to calm their nervous system. And so that could be simply me having them do some emotion freedom technique tapping with me, or do some breathing exercises, or just do there's some physical exercises that I do with people, and it's basically, well, actually some of them is techniques that I've made,
Oh, wow.
uh, where it's about really allowing the person to come into the present moment, because that fear response is not happening right as I'm talking to someone, for instance. So helping them land into the present moment, and oftentimes I'll just have people put their hands over their heart and really breathe and feel into their body and tell me the physical sensations that they're feeling, so that we can then unpack and create self-soothing techniques and mindsets to then realize that the crazy making thinking is not actually what's happening. Does that make sense?
It does. I love it. I love what you're saying. Um, that when you're talking about being in the present, like
Mhm,
it's a statement that's been said. I don't know if people really understand even how to do that because we tend to either, focus of all, the horrible or mistakes or whatever of the past,
mhm,
which becomes overwhelming or can become overwhelming.
mhm,
And then we kind of hope that you sort of have this sort of future, like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Can I hope? Am I not allowed to hope? Or it's dark and gloomy, or especially like today, we're hearing so much negativity, like on the internet and Twitter, and there's so much coming at you every single day. There's something else coming at us via external forces. Staying in the present, like I really like that terminology you're using, and I really like how you're saying to do it
mhm,
because I think that's incredibly important to sort of break it down and okay, deal with now.
mhm,
Don't worry, don't put yourself in that space and already being full of anxiety going into the future. So I
mhm.
really like what you're saying with that because I think that people have to really learn how to do that.
Yeah.
You're talking about with the breathing.
Mhm,
I've been reading a lot about that, and to all our listeners out there, Moira is one of our columnists in our Beautiful Life magazine, the print and online
mm,
versions,
mhm.
and she's a co-author in multiple of our anthologies. So I read a lot about what you guys say, right? I'm reading and I'm really absorbing it all. And breathing, the terminology of breathing comes up all the time.
Mhm.
How important is breath work and learning to breathe? How important would you say that is?
On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being really, really important, I would put it at 50.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Yeah, okay. There you go. So that's something that people really now is breath work the same as meditation?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. What's
You
the difference?
can you can do breath work in meditation. Meditation is meditation is giving your thinking mind a wee bit of a timeout. It's not stopping the thinking because the mind thinks. There's nothing we can do about that. So meditation is not stopping thinking, which a lot of people tend to think that, or come to me saying, "Oh, I can't meditate because I can't stop thinking." And so it meditation is doing actually something that I really invite people to come into is if they can sit and do a meditation where they can just contemplate on the sensation or visualize something or focus on the breath, then that's great. But a lot of people find it that they get really restless or antsy or they don't want to sit for 20 minutes or something like that. So what if that's the case, what I ask people to contemplate is what do they do where they lose all concept of time? And because when we are in flow with something, that's actually a meditative state. So I have clients that they'll do things like knitting or embroidery or going for a walk in the woods or um, sitting by the beach and listening to the sound of the waves or dancing or some kind of creative outlet. All of those are forms of meditation. And because the byproduct is we're calming our nervous system and we're landing into the present moment. Does that make sense?
That's absolutely amazing. I love
Mm,
it. Love it. Okay, well, everything, and you were talking earlier about all the different things that you do and how they all interconnect.
mhm,
One thing I think people misunderstand or don't understand or completely don't know how to work with, and that is intuition.
mhm.
Now, again, intuition, breath work, meditate, is this all coming together? Is it taught? Is intuition taught? Is that something that people can learn? And how do people get past the again, and we were just talking about like staying in the moment and staying in the breath work and da da da. So how do
Mhm.
people like stay calm or to understand the gut feeling of something? And how do they learn to trust that? And does that all like again coincide with the breath work, with the meditation? Does it all
Uh-huh.
come together?
It all interweaves, and it's about one of the things that I think is really important is for everybody to understand that we are all intuitive. It's not a maybe I am and maybe I'm not. Every one of us is intuitive. However, like you just said, we're not necessarily taught that. I was I know when I was growing up, I was taught to be logical and rational and work things out and set goals and push forward and get things done. Truth is, that's all the masculine aspect. Whether you're a man or a woman, that is the masculine aspect. There's no intuition in there. The feminine is where the intuition is, and that's about the feeling and the just sitting and breathing and waiting to see, do I get a gut response to something? How does this make me feel? This is a question that if you've watched any of my videos or followed any of the free offerings that I do, that's something that I encourage people to use that question. It's a secret question. Basically, if you say to yourself, how do I feel about myself here? And when I'm saying here, I'm saying here, thinking these thoughts, doing these things, making these choices, going this direction, saying no to that. How do I feel about myself here? Because we're looking for our own sense of comfort. Oh, I feel at peace. Oh, I feel a sense of ease. I feel a sense of I can do this. And that's all your intuitive guidance saying, yes, this is you're on track. You're doing the things that are in alignment with you. Whereas if you're saying, how do I feel about myself here? And you say, I feel nervous. I feel heaviness. I feel um some kind of stress or anxiety or a pit in my stomach, that's also your intuition saying, don't think you should be pushing through this. You shouldn't be, this is not the best space for you. This is not the best choice or the best environment. Or so it's allowing yourself to feel into that. And then the other part that I've always said about intuition, because it is something that's teachable, and I do teach it in a number of different formats. But one of the things is to number one, tell you, trust that you do have intuition. And then it's like a muscle. So you have to keep exercising it, which is why I love that question. How do I feel about myself here?
I love it.
So there's some homework for you.
That's right. That's right. Um, Here's a question. If somebody comes to you and they say to you that my gut told me not to do this, my gut told me there was a bad scenario, a dangerous thing. My gut told me I shouldn't have made this decision, and I did it anyway. And now I'm dealing with the questionings, the lack of confidence in my next decision. Um, how would you work with them to learn to trust again in themselves when they know that they went against their gut in the first place?
It happens a lot, to be honest with you. The first step is to forgive yourself, particularly if you sit, because we can all do that. Even people who know their intuition is there and can guide them. And then there are times where we choose to go against it. The key piece is not to hold on to it and not keep beating yourself up and saying, well, I can't trust my intuition because the last time I had this kind of opportunity, I didn't listen to it. I went against it. So I think the first piece is to forgive yourself, let yourself off the hook, and kind of just do a reset, shake off the energy and do a reset and commit to, I'm going to listen to my intuition, and I'm not going to jump into something unless my gut feeling says, yes, let's do this.
I like your terminology on the forgive yourself.
Hmm.
Um, Time frame. I mean, at the times when we grew up, right? You and I were simpatico on our our age
Hmm.
group, and we
Hmm.
understand sort of the time before now where people are a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more aware. Um, you the guilt that you feel of decisions that you've made, and
Hmm.
they haunt you. These and then that is whether you stay too long in a marriage, or you didn't take the job, or you didn't do this, and that when it becomes overwhelming for people, and we've talked with people in other podcast interviews talking about sort of the overwhelming feelings of failure, regret, so
Hmm.
these negative emotions. how do we combat sort of the generational aspect, the fact like back then, there wasn't this sort of openness that there is today, the understanding that there is today. There's a lot more openness towards young people having a voice, being able to share their feelings. There's a lot more space for that now, a lot more protective spaces for that than back in the day. So when
Mhm.
you're dealing with somebody who's sort of going through this, where they're the overwhelming feelings of the regrets that they didn't do something, they couldn't have done something. Um, what would be a good start for them? Like to start with meditation? Should they be going into Reiki, hypnotherapy? Like, how does someone like unload all of that? The forgiveness, obviously, is the first step. Most people don't even understand the concept of how do I forgive myself? Where do you even begin?
Hmm.
Or
Um,
does that make sense? That question? Like when people
yes.
hold on to baggage, like or hold on to shame or hold on to guilt.
So here's the thing, and this is we're going to go in really deep here
Okay,
because the
good.
truth of that is it's a choice.
Ah,
And as soon as a person realizes it's a choice to keep telling that story, but it's also a choice to say, I can rewrite my story starting right now. The thing is that everything that's happened in the past is dead, it's done, it's gone. So if somebody is going, "Oh, I am carrying this big guilt or this shame because I screwed up or I didn't do things right or I did let this person down or I let myself down," the more we animate it by telling it. And so when I'm working with people, I will say that is that you can tell me your story once, but I don't want you to keep animating it because it's about saying, okay, I'm just going to unpack this and let it go. I have a number of processes that I take people through to just visit it, acknowledge it, and come to a sense of appreciation and come to an awareness that we are always, always the authors, the actors, the authors, and the navigators of our own life story. And so if it's feeling murky and stuck and kludgy, you can actually put it down and change the entire script of how you're interacting with your own life choices. But it is
wow.
coming to choice.
I like that. I like that. I wrote that down. Um, Now, you said something, we'll close with this. There's a wording in the terminology used about, the feminine and the masculine.
Mhm,
Um, with all that we're becoming much more aware of today of feminine and masculine,
mhm,
we're understanding a lot more of it. People are still quite unaware of the concept of the masculine and the feminine within each person. Is
mhm.
that the correct way to say it? Like within each person? I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right.
No, you're
How
right.
how is that explained to someone to understand, to tap into the feminine or to the masculine? Like, how do you even begin to explain that? And there's so much discussion, sometimes heated discussion about it all, and not, but a lot of lack of understanding because we're learning still so much about all of it. But that particular concept of the female and the male,
Mhm.
how would you even begin to explain that to somebody?
Very simply. And actually, because I do live group sessions, and so I've been in some of these heated discussions where people don't like it if I say feminine and masculine. This came up just quite recently in a group discussion I was having, because some people are putting stigma on it about the patriarchal type of attachment to the masculine, and so then it can kind of become a bit of a pendulum. He's like there's too much of this and there's not enough of that. But the basic basic piece that I encourage people to come into, and this is the thing of we all have masculine and feminine within us, doesn't matter if we're in a male or a female body. And if seeing masculine and feminine triggers or brings about some kind of resistance, I encourage people to get into this mindset that it's about being and doing. The being is the feminine and the doing is the masculine. So it's really about finding that we are not always to push forward and to get things done and to be rational and logical. we can come into our own intuitive nature, which we can only access. Intuitive nature is the feminine, and it's when we allow ourselves to just be. And that can take up so many different ways of just being. It could be sitting and just journaling or meditating or watching your breath or watching the beautiful sunrise. Those are all the places where that will actually start to bring in some sense of balance between the masculine and feminine, aka the being and doing. Does that make sense?
It does, it does. Do you think that, again, and, of our time to sort of more are we becoming more enlightened? Do you think people will, embrace more of the understanding of that as or do you think, like, the young people today embrace it better? Do you think there's a lot of, like, anger issues all around? Like, is there gonna be cultural aspects that maybe stop people to understanding that? Is it going to be are the young people today gonna be more enlightened? Is that a good way to say? Like, did you find that young people are more open to understanding all of that? Or do you think it's like a time frame thing or how when we were raised or anything in that respect? Or do you think we all can start to,
No,
you know
everybody can. Doesn't age does I don't think age has anything to do with it. Because truly, I think this still comes back down to choice. Because, I hear people telling me about the chaos and the discombobulation and the suffering and everything in the world. In my world, it's not happening because I choose what comes into my vibrational bubble, into my energy. If and that will mean I don't watch the mainstream news. And if I see things that kind of disturb me on a social media, I turn it off because this is the space that I really encourage people to come into is that we're the boss of us. So if things are feeling uncomfortable, then we need to look at, and everybody can do this. Everybody can just kind of say, well, listening to that kind of conversation doesn't help me, or it makes me upset. So then my advice is stop listening to it.
I really like that because I find, when you are on Twitter, when you're on these like, the
Mhm.
anger that radiates off people, how angry and everyone's fighting, everyone's in their corners, and if you didn't believe about, like, the, negative energy or bad energy, you just go on there, right? And you're gonna see, like, people just saying the meanest because you're hidden, right? Because you're on there. But doesn't that all that negative energy or the screaming and the yelling that the person's doing, doesn't it affect like they how do you get them to understand it affects them? All it's doing is harming them. And it's eroding, I don't know, whatever you wanna call it, eroding their soul or whatever you wanna call it, eroding them on the inside, being so angry. How do you what's your advice to someone? Like, what can you say to start to help them on a journey of other I mean, obviously, knock it off, get off the internet, get
Mhm.
off Twitter, but when someone is feeling so much anger, what's the first step they can take? Like, to say, "Okay, is it" I mean, I understand your concept of choice. Is that it? Just, "Okay, I choose today to change my life, and I'm gonna calm down." And how do you get them to get into that space, quickly, or does is this a process that's gonna take a while?
It's completely a process and it doesn't actually have to take a while, but for some people it will. The thing is though they have to choose it for themselves. I can't go and listen to somebody yelling and go up and tap them on the shoulder and say, "Oh, hey, let me teach you a breathing technique." Or, "Oh, hey, listen to this guided meditation. It's going to help you calm down." Because it won't. Until a person comes and says, I've got all this toxicity in me. I've been angry for so long. Can you help me unpack this and release it? There's the opening. But like I say, it's about when we come into this idea of choice, we also then honor and give every being on this planet has the right to choose their own path, the right to choose their own reality, their own energy. My right to choose means I am going to navigate my choices so that I'm not necessarily in the space of people being that angry. However, I will hold space if somebody wants to come and say, I need help to undo this or to start finding a better way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Moira. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
joining us today. Please take a moment and just let everyone know your website, your email, how they can get in touch with you, and any last words you'd like to add.
Absolutely. So my website is wellnesswithmoira.com, WELLNESS with Moira, MOIRA.com. And for that's kind of the main portal to find me, as I actually do have, there's a Moira Services, you can go and find my free and paid services. But the other, platform I'd want to share with you is to find me. My name is Moira Hutchison, Hutchison, and I am a meditation teacher on Insight Timer.
Oh,
So there is a number, actually, I have over 90 free guided meditations on that app. I
wow.
I also have, I think it's 7. I have 7 courses available on Insight Timer. And we were talking a lot about forgiveness. I
Mhm.
have 2. Forgiveness was my first course that I ever did for Insight Timer. I think that's been there since like 2017. And it's embracing the power of forgiveness. And it's interesting because with what you were talking about, Ronnie, that I actually also do a free live session on Insight Timer every Thursday morning at 9:30 Eastern. And that's where we get to have lots of fun group conversations. But in those conversations, we would talk about my forgiveness course, and it became quite apparent that there was a huge need for self-forgiveness, a wee
Yeah.
bit different from just forgiveness. So I actually did a 15-day course, which is now live on there too,
Wow.
to help people really step into this idea of self-forgiveness.
Moira, this has just been wonderful. Thank you so much
Oh, it's my
again for
pleasure.
joining us. And again, you can check Moira out on our site, beautiful.lifemagazine.com. She's got a column on there. She also is in our print magazine, one of our columnists, and she has co-authored multiple of our anthologies, which you can
Mhm.
also see and access on our site. Moira, thank you again, and you have a great day.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do. You're a very supportive energy. I really appreciate it.